myself from the group and went over to the table to fill my plate. And Joe came up beside me and goes, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." He takes me over into sort of a corner near a coat closet. And he said, "Suzie, I know it's a little difficult not having a man around the house. So if you need any help with anything, I mean anything, feel free to call me. I'll come over day or night." I'd been feeling uncomfortable. I am now feeling the most uncomfortable. And shortly after that, I gathered my two redheads and I went home. Things started snowballing from there. I no longer needed to do my shift in the carpool. My kids were still picked up, but I didn't have to drive. I found out that through the grocery store gossip, actually in the grocery store, that I was having an affair with a junior in high school. His name was Scott. And Scott actually had a big crush on the exchange student from Germany that lived next door named Anya, and a crush on Judy, the high school beauty, who was my babysitter for the nighttime, who lived across the street. So from the vantage point of my front steps, he could see which one he should go over and knock on the door as they came home. In the meantime, pretend he was talking to me or hanging out with my kids. I was passed over for a full-time job at the high school. And when the vice principal explained to me why, he said, "Well, you're more comfortable with our alternative students, aren't you?" So I was accepted at Emerson with a fellowship in spite of this big red A or whatever letter the people in Lidditz had on me, because I was not divorced through any fault of my own. You see, my ex-husband had stepped out on me, as my grandmother would say, a few years earlier, and we'd never really been able to reconcile since then. Before coming to Boston, I prepared my kids. I introduced them to the Red Sox Nation, tried to explain that the monster was a wall. We practiced saying "Pak the Ka" and "Have it yad" and to a lot of giggles. And we read "Make Way for Ducklings" over and over and over. If you don't know "Make Way for Ducklings," it's a story of Mr. Mallard and Mrs. Mallard needing to find a new home, and Mr. Mallard finds the perfect home. It's the little island in the pond in the garden of Boston. And in it, policeman Mike stops the traffic so that Mrs. Mallard and her offspring, Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack, can cross the road to get over to Dad in the island, which would be their new home. I packed everything up and moved to my 500 square foot basement studio apartment. And it wasn't easy. I knew every day that they were going to find out that I was a liar, that I didn't know what I was doing, that I shouldn't have been selected for this program, that I wasn't smart enough. And in spite of all those things, they were going to kick me out, send me back, and make me pay for this term of school. I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning going, "Must study more, must study more." One Tuesday before Thanksgiving, it was snowing, and I was making my way to an 8 o'clock poetry class. And as I came down Charles Street from my apartment, I started thinking about how the week before I had gone to a club with a friend who played drums, and I had dressed all in black, as I found out you could do, and I stood there and nodded my head like this, which, if you know, in the Boston music scene means that you're appreciative of the music. I had also gone to a pre-holiday party at my new friend Sean's. Sean was a poli-sci major, and she knew everybody in media and everybody in the State House. And I talked to people, and it had nothing to do with orthodontia or mulch or whether I needed to borrow 2 eggs or not. Just the day before, my professor and mentor, Dr. Cornell, had said to me, "Do you think you would consider teaching one of my courses?" About this time, I got to that intersection where policeman Mike had stopped the traffic for the Mallard family. And he didn't need to be there because it was a snowstorm and there was no traffic at 8 o'clock in the morning or just before 8. And as I crossed into the garden and I looked and saw the snow on the trees and on the ground, and there were no footsteps anywhere, and it was quiet and beautiful, and I breathed in and I thought, wait a minute, they're letting me be here. I'm allowed to be here. And I looked down, and there they were, with little white snow hats on, Mrs. Mallard, and Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Uack, Pack, and Quack, making their little bronze frozen way to the island. And I realized that I wasn't a displaced homemaker. I was home.
Suzie Sims-Fletcher. Last up before the break, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Nora Dooley. She's a children's author and an accomplished storyteller, and she has also started up the whole cycle of Mass Mouth here in the state, which is also about autobiographical storytelling. And there's probably two slams a month here now?
There's 2 slams left in our season.